This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and pleased to have as our guest today, Brooke Dickhart. Brooke, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
By way of introduction to our listeners, Brooke, let me just hit a highlight or two, and then we'll have you fill in the many gaps that highlight leaves. Brooke is the founder and executive director of an organization called the Joel Fund, based in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And it is the mission, according to their website, the mission of the Joel Fund, to use the power of community to engage, educate, and encourage veterans and their families. And having talked with Brooke before we came into the studio, I know that the word community is especially significant there, but we'll come back to that. Brooke, why don't you tell us how the Joel Fund got started? And I know that it has a lot to do with your dad and your growing up, so you can weave all of that together for us. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. So my dad was a Navy SEAL for 20 years. He served on SEAL Team 2, and he was a plank owner of SEAL Team 6.
And a plank owner is?
Sorry, that he was an original member, so he helped to start SEAL Team 6. The man who started it was Richard Marcinko, and he kind of handpicked the men he wanted with different backgrounds to help start SEAL Team 6. And
SEAL Team 6 has got some renown, as I understand it. Tell us about that.
So SEAL Team 6 is today known for being the organization that took out Osama bin Laden. So a lot of people know about SEAL Team 6, although it doesn't go by SEAL Team 6 anymore.
I don't know if you said, but you grew up in Virginia Beach.
Yes. Okay. So my dad was stationed there, and I was born and raised. Very few people can say that they were born and raised in Virginia Beach since it's such a big military town. But my parents divorced when I was young, and my mom stayed. And then my dad continued his service. He was all over the world, really, out of Virginia Beach. And then sometimes he was living in Florida. He even lived in Greece. But we stayed in Virginia Beach for my whole, until I went to college.
And your dad was with the Navy SEALs for 20 years?
Yes.
Having joined when he was 17, you told me.
Yes. I have the paperwork that his dad had to sign for him to be able to join the military. And he was in from 64 to 84. And he did 4 tours in Vietnam during that time.
2 Purple Hearts?
Yes. Lots of medals, accommodations, and yes, 2 Purple Hearts.
Obviously a bright guy, speaking 5 languages.
Yes, so languages was definitely his thing. He was in intelligence, but he spoke Russian, Greek, Arabic, Spanish, and English. And he used those while serving in the military.
Well, tell us how it is that his background led to your founding of the Joel Fund.
So my dad passed away in 2014 after a long battle with PTSD. I think he probably dealt with it all of his life, but he really started to struggle like the last 7 years that he was alive. And it manifested in alcohol abuse and drugs and depression. And I didn't know much about it. He didn't talk to me about his time in the service. He didn't talk to me about his PTSD. He would kind of mention it in conversation, but it was never an in-depth conversation. And so when he passed away, I was really at a loss as to what to do. I had a hard time processing everything that we had been through. And I decided to start an organization in his honor because I figured if we went through this, then there has to be others that have gone through it also. And I didn't want people to have to go through the same experiences that we had. So when we first started the Joel Fund, I wanted to connect veterans and their families to services because taking the medication and group therapy did not work for my dad. He needed to know what his other options were. I know at one point in his life, he used art to work through his issues. And so I wanted to be able to learn about those types of organizations that were out there and then be able to connect veterans. So that was how the Joel Fund started.
We'll come back and hear more about the Joel Fund and your dad and such. But as I understand it, the founding of the organization really was a fairly significant pivot in your life. You were in business for yourself prior to that.
Yes, I had been running an embroidery business for about 10 years. or about 7 years when I started the Joel Fund. And so that was my full-time job, and the Joel Fund was something I was doing on the side. It was really complete transparency. It was my therapy. It was how I was working through everything. And as it started to grow, I decided that I wanted to sell the embroidery business and just focus full-time on being able to serve veterans.
And that business was very successful.
Yes, we were. I mean, I don't know if I would say very successful, but we did okay. We were, I at one point I had a storefront, and then we were in the Dallas market and the Atlanta markets, and were selling our products in over 80 stores across the country. And then went back to just doing online sales. And so that's where I was when I decided to sell it and fully commit to putting my efforts into the Joel Fund. So it was a great ride. It was a great part of my life. I enjoyed it.
I would call that very successful.
Thank you.
You've got a song that has some connection with your dad and your background that we're going to start with, Unforgettable.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So this is a song that I danced to my dad and my stepdad, danced with them at my wedding. I was very lucky growing up. My parents had a great relationship, and I mean, even to where my dad would stay with my mom and my stepdad when he was in town for the SEAL team reunions. And so I wanted to honor that at my wedding. So I had both my dad and my stepdad walk me down the aisle. And then the father-daughter dance, I split with them and danced to Unforgettable, because they are both two unforgettable men in my life.
A great introduction. Let's hear the song.
Sounds great.
Unforgettable by Nat King Cole.
Unforgettable, that's what you are.
That was Unforgettable by Nat King Cole. If you're just joining us, our guest today is Brooke Dickhart. Brooke is the founder and executive director of an organization called the Joel Fund. And Brooke, as we were saying a short time ago, your focus is on community and reconnecting veterans to life at home, life in their community, with all the value that those connections bring. And we'll talk a bit more about that shortly. But tell us how the Joel Fund got its name.
Absolutely. So my dad, his name was Joe, and that's how I always knew him. But later in life, my dad started to go by Joel. I even found paperwork after he died that he had tried to start a business with the name Joel. He used it to sign his artwork. And
he was an artist.
Yes. So he painted and he did drawings and sculpture. I have a sculpture of Ernest Hemingway that he did, and on the bottom it is signed by Joel. So it just became kind of his pseudonym. It's what he used later in life. And I often wonder if was his way of escaping who he was when he was in the military. I know with his PTSD, he looked back a lot, and I mean, he even told me, as you get older, you question the things that you did when you were younger. And I think that Joel was maybe his way of escaping. And so to honor that, we decided to call this organization the Joel Fund.
What did your dad do after he retired from the Navy SEALs, which you said, I think, was in 84?
Yes. So to me at that point, I just thought he was working a variety of jobs. I know he went back to school for gemology. But what I learned at his service from one of his good friends was that he was in the CIA.
At his funeral service.
Yes, yes. So completely took me by surprise. I met this man's wife in the bathroom, and she introduced me to her husband. They were there for the service also, and he told me that he served in the CIA with my dad, and that my dad had been doing that for about 10 years. I had no idea. I mean. I also found out that when he was in gemology school, that was all part of his work with the CIA. So I don't know. I mean, It was crazy to hear those stories about him because to me it was just, just dad.
What kind of connections did you have with your dad over the years? He was away a lot, and then you say he was in the CIA from around 84 to 94.
Mm-hmm. So my whole childhood, my dad was in and out of my life, but not in a bad way. I mean, we had a wonderful relationship. I can remember he'd pick me up and take me to 7-Eleven and let me fill up a whole bag worth of candy. And my mom used to tell him, I'll send you the dentist bill. But I mean, I had a great childhood, and he was there when he needed to be there. He was at my high school graduation, my wedding, my college graduation. He met my kids. But, in between that, he was traveling the world and helping to fight for our freedom. I mean, he
unbeknownst to you.
Right. Yes. It was probably, I remember when I found out that what a Navy SEAL was, and it came from a classmate of mine when he was like, oh, what does your dad do? And I said, he's in the Navy. And I think I was maybe 8th or 9th grade. And he said, well, what exactly does he do? And I said, he's a Navy SEAL. And he goes, what? He pointed at a bicycle tire, and he goes, your dad could be in that tire and we wouldn't even know it. He could jump out and kill us. Huh. That was like how I learned what people thought of about the Navy SEALs. Mm-hmm. And then, as I grew up, I understood that it takes a certain kind of individual to do those jobs. And I never resented him for it. I never held it against him for him being gone, because I knew he had a different calling, and, but he was still a big part of my life. We shared a connection with art. Art was something my dad used to heal. And I went to an art school growing up, and my mom always told me, you get that from your dad. And so art was a way that I always felt connected to him. After he passed away, I found a bunch of my artwork that he had saved over the years from when I was younger. So it was, even though he wasn't always in person, I knew he was always there and just a phone call away.
It was the last few years of his life, as I understand it, that has served in significant part as motivation for the Joel Fund. Tell us about that.
Those the last 7 years of my dad's life were probably the worst for us, because I didn't know what he was going through and understand. And there were times he would call me slurring. He was so drunk or high, and I had young kids. I didn't understand.
And this was after his Navy SEAL career. It was after his CIA career.
Mm-hmm. This was the last 7 years of his life. So he, 6 months before he passed away, he went missing. And when I found him, I vowed that I would repair our relationship, because that was one of the scariest moments of my life. And so
when you got that call that he was
missing. Yep. And his friends had no idea where he was. And so they, the police and the doctors wouldn't give them any information. So they would only talk to me. And even when I finally found him in a mental hospital, the nurse said to me, I can't tell you if he's here, but I can tell you that if you give me your phone number, if he's here, I'll have him call you. And so that's how I knew I had finally found him. But I swore that I would make things right between us. And after he got out of the hospital, I went to Florida and spent some time with him. And that's when I met with his doctors and learned, well, I shouldn't say I learned. I learned from my dad what was going on, but I never learned from the doctors how to help him. And so after he died, I swore that I didn't want anyone else to go through that. And so, one of our goals is to educate people on the signs and symptoms of PTSD, to take the time to learn so you are aware and can see if your loved one is going through that. Because I never had anyone talk to me about that.
And I gather that you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you view that, or did view that, as a significant deficiency on the part of the Veterans Administration.
Absolutely. I mean, I was filled with so much anger after my dad died. I wanted to go after the VA, and it took one of my dad's SEAL team buddies saying to me, you were hitting your head up against a brick wall. You won't get anywhere with that. And so it was that conversation that made me decide to try to make positive change. And I'll tell you, the changes in the VA that I've seen over the last several years has been amazing. And, they recognize that changes have to be made. And we made it our goal to partner with the VA. And we do work very close with the Durham VA. And they refer students to our art classes. So it's been an amazing relationship. But I had to make that switch mentally to be able to get there. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to get there because of the partnership and the connections that we've been able to have because of that, and that relationship that we have with the local VA. They are making great strides in how they serve veterans.
That's great news. I'd like to have you tell us more about what exactly the Joel Fund does, but before we do that, tell us about this second song, Hello, by Adele.
Yes, so this is a song that was out around the time that my dad passed away. I have a playlist of songs that I listen to when I want to really think about my dad, and this is number one.
And he passed away in 2014?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
The lyrics are what speak to me in this song. There's a part where she says, I'm sorry. Hello, can you hear me? And this is, just me thinking about my dad because I carry so much regret that I didn't know more. Sorry, this song really gets me.
I understand.
So it's definitely top of my list that makes me think about him.
You commented to me before we came into the studio something along the lines of when somebody loses his or her support group, the demons really raise their heads.
Yes. And that's...
You want to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. I think so everything that we do is about community. If I look back at things with my dad, isolation would have been one of the first signs that if I had known. He really removed himself from his community. And I think that creating that sense of community so that these men and women don't feel isolated is what's so important to what we do.
Thank you for sharing that, Brooke. Let's hear the song, Hello, by Adele.
Hello, it's me. I was wondering if after all
That was Hello by Adele. You told me, Brooke, that you connect with that song on many different levels. Is there anything more you'd like to say about it?
That song is just something that really helps me focus. For me, it reminds me of why I'm here. I don't necessarily need the reminder, but it can take me to a dark place in the sense that because it came out after my dad died or around that time, sometimes if I just hear that song, it truly helps bring me back to exactly why I'm doing all this.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you need a little reminder.
Uh-huh.
You can get caught up in some of the other stuff, but I hear that song and that's all it takes.
Tell us more about what the Joel Fund does.
So we have a few different programs. Operation Art, which I mentioned briefly, is our art classes for veterans and their immediate family members. We offer in-person classes in Wake Forest. And then because of the pandemic, we pivoted and now offer some of them virtually. So we have photography, writing, drawing, and painting. And then we have a partnership with a business called the Maker Space in Raleigh, where we offer woodworking classes for veterans and their family members. We also offer a resource connection, and that's originally how we started out. And that is a program that is definitely near and dear to my heart, because when someone's in the middle of a crisis, or if they're in a bad place, sitting down to the computer and researching how to get help is not going to work. There's so much information. How do you find the right organization? How do you trust what you find? And so we make it our goal to network with organizations across our region so that when we're working with a veteran, we can connect them directly to the organization. Or if we don't know where to send them, we know who to call to find out where to send them. And that is to remove that stress from their life and to make sure that they get exactly what they need to help them to stay healthy mentally and physically.
What can you tell us about the suicide rates among veterans?
So the national average, they say, is originally it was 22. Now they say 20 a day.
20 a day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what they're saying now. But in the state of North Carolina, it's 5 a week, which is above the national average. And so the Joel Fund, while reducing the veteran suicide rate is not our mission, it is at the forefront of every decision that we make. We ask ourselves, could this help reduce the veteran suicide rate? And so we have our hashtag Take 5 Save 5, and that means take 5 minutes to help save 5 lives. Take 5 minutes to learn the signs and symptoms of PTSD. Take 5 minutes to reach out to a veteran in your life. Ask them for coffee, send them a text, make a phone call, and then take 5 minutes to help spread the word. So those are the ways that we try to reduce the veteran suicide rate without it necessarily being in our mission.
Speaking of your mission, what can you tell us about the measures of success that you use and how things have been going?
So we measure our success for our art program by surveys that we receive from our students. But we also, for us, referrals that we get from the veterans that we serve is a huge measure of success. A lot of word of mouth from veterans. With the pandemic and moving things virtual, we were able to expand our reach and to serve more veterans. So last year, we tripled the number of veterans that we had served from the year before, which at the beginning of the pandemic, I wasn't even sure how we were going to survive. So we've had a lot of growth this year. We've hired some new people to help with programming and social media and that sort of thing. But we've had a great year, and I think that success is just based on how we do things.
And I gather that you've seen one veteran connect with another.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's with our coffee events that we do and our art classes. I received a text just yesterday that 2 veterans from our art classes got together for coffee. They had only met virtually, and they got together and face to face and had coffee together just yesterday.
Speaking of your virtual connecting that you do too, it strikes me that your influence extends way beyond Wake Forest and Raleigh.
I think with the pandemic, we've been able to do that. We now serve veterans in 6 states. And we recently, our writing program was picked up by Walter Reed Military Medical Center as part of their employee wellness program. So we had 2 classes that we ran for Walter Reed and 2 writing classes. We even had 2 of the students were calling in from overseas. They were active duty serving in the Middle East. And they just renewed our contract. So we'll be starting another round of classes with Walter Reed here in the next couple of months.
Very good.
Yes, it's been quite the ride.
Is there opportunity for people to volunteer in any way with the Joel Fund?
Yes. So locally, right now we're actually working, the Bob Woodger Foundation gave us a grant to help provide food for veterans in need in our area. And we chose to do that by offering produce boxes. So we have a group of volunteers that have been delivering produce boxes to veterans in our area. And we're hoping to continue that program through the summer and hopefully make it year round. But we also have a furniture program where we deliver furniture, donated items to veterans in need. And we are always looking for volunteers to help, pick up furniture, deliver it to our storage unit, load the truck. So there's opportunities there also.
If people want more information about the Joel Fund, how can they get that?
The best place is our website. It's just www.thejoelfund.org.
The Joel Fund, TheJoelFund.
Yes.
.org. Very good. Tell us about this song we're going to wrap up with. Brooke, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay.
Yes, this is a happy song.
Brings us back around in certain respects.
Absolutely. So growing up in Virginia Beach, I spent a lot of time out at the Chesapeake Bay. We'd go fishing on the bay. We would go to the beach there because that wasn't as crowded with the tourists. And this song, I think of my dad. My dad loved the water. Like even his ashes were spread out in the ocean, and so I think about him. And kind of another side story to this song is my uncle was a Navy pilot and was stationed in Virginia Beach. He was killed in the line of duty, and my favorite movie is Top Gun. And that's the connection with my uncle and living in Virginia Beach and seeing all the jets. But this song is played in that movie, and but it's always made me think of my dad and my uncle, and just their love of military and the dock and sitting at the edge of the bay. I think is how I picture my dad.
We don't care about Frisco Bay. We're talking Chesapeake Bay.
That's right.
Well, Brooke, it's been great having you here today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story and my dad's story.
It's our privilege, and we wish you continued success, wish you well in your directing of the Joel Fund. What an impressive mission, impressive organization.
Thank you so much.
Let's hear the song, Sitting on